Yeah. Let's get into this. Let's get into this creepy story. Let's get into this creepy story. TikTok's most disturbing mysteries.
Is in the air. Eastern on TN.
She feels so real. She feels like a real baby.
The following video
That's
contains
she has tiny bones inside.
That was a crazy start.
February 2022, an urban explorer makes his way down a long-forgotten dirt road somewhere in rural China. His ultimate destination was a dilapidated structure shrouded in mystery for both him and all others in the region, with many referring to it simply as a laboratory. But what kind of laboratory was completely unknown. This did little to deter the man. In fact, the mystique of this building made the location even more tantalizing,
Why do people...
as it would make for the perfect
Dude, no, hold on. Why do people explore these abandoned buildings and hospitals? Like, that doesn't seem like some fun shit to do. Like, I get it if you're chasing the adrenaline, go skydive or some
setting
bullshit.
for a video on his TikTok page, perhaps the one that would finally thrust him into the public eye. And as he walked down
Hold on, yo. That PFP is crazy. This nigga doesn't look alright, bro. Is this him?
TikTok page, perhaps the one that would finally thrust him into the public eye. And as he walked down that old dirt road, he believed that each step was taking him closer and closer to uncovering that building's original purpose. But what he'd find in that old laboratory wouldn't be answers. In fact, he would be left with far more questions, as the video he would go on to post would leave hundreds of thousands of people horrified, disturbed, and in many cases, scarred for life. With the clip setting off what may very well be the darkest mystery to ever unfold on the site, and perhaps one of the most disturbing in the entire history of the internet. Before we fully get into things here, do you have any sponsor build a tool that automatically
ads, bro? I get it. Get your
started,
money, bro. I get it, bro.
Of all the cases I've covered in the world of internet oddities and mysteries, this one is probably the most unique, as the contents of this mystery involve videos that can barely be broadcast in any capacity, due to just how disturbing they are. And although I'm sure some of you will be disappointed that the videos themselves are not shown in their entirety, I can assure you that these clips are ones that you don't want to see. And on that note, let's go back to that old dirt road.
Okay.
The location was one of many examined by this explorer who goes under the name Beanbag Adventures on Douyin, the original Chinese version of TikTok. And for the sake of this...
Speaking of this version of TikTok, when TikTok was getting banned, is this the same app? No, that was Red Note, right?
Video, his real name will not be disclosed as he's never made it publicly available, so I'll just be referring to him as X. X's channel features a multitude of creepy locations left to the mercy of time and isolation. But of all the places he would go on to visit, he could tell immediately that this one was going to be different. As he entered the structure, he was greeted with an overwhelming stench.
Oh, nah. You see, I'm not built for this type of bullshit, bro. Like, I like watching scary things, but IRL, my nigga, look at that hallway, bro. You don't know what's hiding within there? Nah, fuck that.
That covered the building in its entirety. The mask he wore helped block out some of the smell, but not nearly enough to make it a pleasant experience.
Jesus.
Noticing this, X immediately began to suspect that something was off, as he roamed the halls of the lab using the smell as a marker, following it to uncover its source. This led him past the first floor and down into the structure's basement, which consisted of old concrete rooms and tunnels, almost like some sort of fallout shelter. And as he passed by one room in particular, he knew he had found the source of the stench, as the smell coming from its opening was nearly unbearable. But having come all this way, he decided to push on and enter the room, turning on his camera just a few minutes later to reveal what exactly he had discovered.
来吧，兄弟们想看的，地下实验室，心理承受能力强。
What is this fucking motivational music behind this creepy ass video, bro?
的朋友，随着镜头来，接下来大家所看到的一切物品。
As he enters the room, X shows a large pool-like structure lined with old pieces of wood, and as it comes into frame, he prefaces the discovery by saying that the contents within this pool are merely props from an old movie. He then proceeds to point the camera down inside, revealing thick green water. And floating within this water were what looked to be children, mere babies, and dozens of them, decaying in the water. X then begins to gag and runs out of the room, shutting off the camera right before getting sick. The video is shocking, and as it made its way through the Douyin site, it was met with mixed reactions. Many took X's word to heart, believing his explanation that the children were simply abandoned props left over from some movie that must have been shot there, while others called it an outright
Maybe I've seen those, like, those look realistic as fuck.
hoax, believing that X's demeanor and the editing of the video came across as disingenuous, before going on to assume that the explorer had just set it up himself. But within this crowd were a select few who were more concerned. The bodies looked so real, and each one appeared to be in different stages of decomposition. And that smell, if they were simply made of plastic and rubber, then why was that smell so unbearable to the point that X had gotten physically sick?
Yeah, think about it, like, logically. Like, even if it was just water that's been sitting there, I know sometimes water can smell after I saw something move under my door. Hold on. Chat, hold on, bro. Maybe my brain's just playing tricks on me. But I understand that water sometimes smells, especially if it's been sitting out, like, in a place for a while. But the way he's explaining this scent, it has to be something like decaying, bro. And that can't be plastic.
Following this line of thinking, if somehow this were to be real, then that begs the question, what were all these bodies doing in an abandoned laboratory? Given what seemed to be their level of decomposition, it was clear that they hadn't been there for more than a few months, yet this structure has been left abandoned for decades, and you can tell as much just by looking at the infrastructure. Due to this video having been posted in 2022, this automatically rules out the idea that this was part of China's one-child policy, as that was abolished back in 2015. Plus, that policy wouldn't have matched anyway, as some of the children seen in that water were, well, just that, children. None of them were infants, and some were even comparable in size to those as old as 5 or 6, which seems to immediately rule out this explanation.
So what the fuck
Digging
is
into the
going
video
on?
a bit deeper, a few others began to notice what they believed to be an off-putting detail, as directly after X states that the bodies in the pool were simply props, he then goes on to say that this video was going to be censored, and that you'll only ever see this from him. This prompted the theory that the movie prop line was just some sort of cover-up to allow the footage to be shown across Douyin, so that he could expose the true horrors transpiring in this old lab. Admittedly, some of these details are a bit bizarre, but despite all of this, the theory that these bodies were somehow real was merely speculation, and far-fetched speculation to say the least, as most would go on to assume the footage to be fake, carrying on with their lives and forgetting all about this bizarre video. And it wasn't just the viewers who seemed to immediately forget about this footage, as X himself would continue posting as usual immediately after this, making no mention of him.
People who go through this shit, you gotta be fucking psychotic, bro. There gotta be something loose in your head, bro. If that happened to me and I was exploring an abandoned building and I saw, even whether it be real or fake, nigga, that's my sign. I'm never coming back here. Are you fucking kidding me, bro? Even if it's my job, I'm switching
his
careers.
Discovery in that laboratory, and much like that laboratory, in the months that followed, X's video would soon be lost to time.
Until?
Or at least this was the case, until December 26th, 2022, when X would once again follow that old dirt road and return to the strange room.
Don't tell me the bodies are gone. Or there's more.
防空洞里面那个实验室，一池子小孩，一池子小孩。今天我又来看一看，拍上点视频，胆小的勿看啊！记得注意细节。
This time, things within that tunnel were different. Upon entering, he would see strange bottles and tubes on the ground, which hadn't been there before, and as he approached the pool, he could now see children's clothing scattered all across the pathway, including a cap which would commonly be worn by a child. The pool itself was also slightly altered, as there was now a large blue tarp covering the majority of its surface, concealing its contents. However, at the far end was an opening, just large enough to reveal that those prop bodies from before were in fact still in there. Only this time, the idea of them being movie props was far less believable. It had been 10 long months since X had first peered into that pool, and now the bodies he once claimed to be from a movie set were far more decayed, to the point that not just the bodies were shown, but the bones within them as well.
Oh!
Skulls, ribs, hips were all on display, being revealed by the peeling of their rotten flesh, in a scene that looked all too realistic. So much so that X was now referring to them solely as dead bodies, as that level of detail would have been nearly impossible to fake. X then pulls out his phone and reveals the date and time, December 26th, 2022, 11:26 a.m., before turning to the exit and leaving in a hurry.
看时间啊，2022年12月26，兄弟们，这个味儿啊，我居然能挺住，
That seems like a dumping site, bro. That blood on the floor too?
不知道说点什么。
Don't know what's covering it.
哎呀，这里还有这些药瓶子，
Yuck. What
拜
are the
拜了，
bottles for?
哥走了，我去，这个臭啊，啊，拜拜拜拜
Dude, this nigga is way too calm for this bullshit, bro.
拜拜，你没得。
The second video was far different from the first, as its validity is
does
much
not
harder to
care,
argue
bro.
against. I obviously won't be showing it here, but the bodies
Bro,
were
I'm
just
telling
too
you, it's
realistic.
weird,
I honestly
bro.
don't think they could have been faked, as even across all the big budget movies I've ever seen, no dead body props have ever come close to this level of realism, which makes it seem all the more unlikely that someone could have faked this just for a TikTok. And that sentiment was shared across the site almost universally. Rather than being a source of speculation like that first video, people were now left simply horrified, having likely witnessed the sight of a dozen dead children. And this wasn't the only major difference between the two clips either, with the most relevant coming from the contents of the video themselves. For starters, those bottles, clothing, and that tarp were all not there upon his first visit,
that means somebody
meaning that
came
whatever
back.
this pool was being used for, it was still being actively visited and worked
my
on
days.
after that first video was made. And worst of all, the number of bodies shown in that water was significantly higher the second time around, meaning that whatever he had walked in on was still clearly actively happening.
Bro.
Despite this disturbing detail, this didn't stop X from returning
My
just
question is, why didn't he tell the police this, bro? Like, if you can see clearly, like, the bodies, like, are increasing and shit, why didn't you tell the police?
a few days later, determined to reveal all of the horrors of that old lab. And upon this third visit, he would follow that tunnel even...
No. You see? This nigga went the first time. He saw dead bodies. He was like, oh, these must be props. He went the second time. He saw more dead bodies. Children's clothes. And, like, a bunch of bottles. So, what goes through niggas' minds to go there again? Call the police.
deeper, this time finding tubes with fetuses in them,
Oh,
skulls, and even
astaghfirullah.
a fully complete
Oh my
vertebrae
days.
piled on top hundreds of other bones. He'd even uncover multiple large bags filled to the brim.
For real, that's what he's asking for. He's asking to be a dead body. And from all these clips, this nigga's alone. Because he keeps turning the camera around, you know what I'm saying?
With even more skeletal
alone.
remains. And what made this all the more confusing was that all these bones were from what seemed to be fully grown humans, meaning that within this abandoned building were bodies ranging from newborns to children all the way to adults. According to a few people across Reddit, X would make one more video in this laboratory, this time focusing his search on the upper levels of the building, revealing more bones seemingly belonging to children, as well as kids' toys and masks.
还是实验室的化学用剂，
What are all these
这里
bottles
还有
though?
不明的液体，这里还发现了小孩子的面具，小时候的回忆，一张面具，
Yeah, this nigga's
还
cooked in
行
the head,
这里
bro.
还一个皮
He's
箱，
genuinely enjoying this shit,
还有
bro.
一只高跟鞋，这个应该是医院拍的片子。
What are those?
在走廊东侧发现了一个特别的格局，这个房间
Yo, me and you
格
both,
局
bro.
像不像是
I'm
特别
good
危
off
险？
this shit, bro. You gotta
医
pay
院
me
的1
hella
楼、
bread.
2楼、3楼空空如也。
I personally couldn't fully verify if this location was the same or not, but it does appear similar enough to at least mention here. With that being said, we were left with 3 to 4 short videos, and so many questions, the most overarching of all being what the hell was happening in this laboratory. This question prompted
I'm
numerous
saying,
theories,
bro,
one of
if
the
you
earliest
fell through
being
that
that a
crack, you're a
serial killer
goner.
had been using this location to dump the many bodies of his victims.
That's what I
This would
think.
kind of make sense, as up until X had visited the building, it was virtually untouched for decades, making it the perfect place to commit heinous crimes far away from the public eye.
Oh my god.
But the main problem with this theory is the scale of it all. There were just too many bodies for it all to have been done by one person. Even a
Shit.
group of mass murderers would have a hard time amassing so many victims.
Shit.
And given the fact that most of these bodies seemed to belong to children, and the fact that they were disposed of in such a bizarre way, made
Yeah,
many
why would
others
you throw
begin
them
to
in
shift
water?
their beliefs towards other theories, with by far the most popular being that this location was being used as some sort of black market organ trade. This idea became a main focal point following the second video in particular, as many of the bodies shown had openings in their chest cavities, which revealed that they all seemed to lack
Organs?
any internal organs,
Oh my
prompting
god.
the belief that the kids were
Nigga, are they selling organs, bro?
killed for their organs, perhaps in a medical facility somewhere else, and their bodies were dumped in this location afterwards, assuming that they would never be
What
found.
the fuck?
And in the minds of many, this wasn't just being done by some random group, and instead they believed it
Harvesting,
was
yeah,
being
bro.
carried out by
By
their
the
country's
governments?
own government.
China has no effective organ donation program. That's because culturally, Chinese people believe the body must stay intact even after death.
The organ
So?
trade in China is quite the rabbit hole, but to make things simple, China has one of the lowest percentages of organ donors out of any major country. But despite this, it's somehow known as one of the easiest places to get an organ transplant, especially
Yeah, you see? The math ain't mathing. The math ain't mathing. How are you gonna be the lowest organ donating country but have the quickest like organ? No.
for wealthy individuals. People even travel there from other countries to get life-saving procedures, as transplants that could take
Right?
years and years in the US can be done in China in a
Like
matter
that.
of weeks, as long as the money is right.
Nah.
Which begs the question, where do these organs come from? Well, in recent years, China has been caught executing prisoners that were not sentenced to death simply in order to use their organs in this trade, all because of the staggering amount of money that can be made per procedure. And though this practice works for adults, there is one thing that these prisons don't have:
Kids.
children.
Yeah.
So when a child needs a new organ, let's say one of a high-ranking official or a wealthy member of Chinese society, where do they turn? This idea has prompted the belief that China has been
Right?
doing
They have the
some
most
shady
people.
things
Like,
to obtain these
the
organs.
population in China is pretty big too. That's why they had the child clause or whatever. So how can they be low number of donors but high numbers of organs on the market? Some ain't not
Like
right,
perhaps
bro.
kidnapping
Some
and
ain't
killing
not at all.
innocent children simply to use their organs and save other wealthy children in order to gain a massive profit. Now I have to
Jesus.
say that this is not a fully confirmed theory by any means,
Okay,
but it is a
allegedly.
fairly common belief even
allegedly.
among members of China's own population. And because of this, X's 4 videos prompted outrage across social media, with many calling out the government for their involvement. And as soon as those fingers started to point, the case took a drastic turn.
Don't tell me this nigga disappeared, bro.
On the morning of January 15th, the Beanbag Adventure channel would disappear from the Douyin site
Yeah,
without
yeah. They got my nigga, bro. They got my nigga, bro. Yeah, he's probably he disappeared. They got him. They probably took his organs
explanation,
and shit, bro.
which honestly comes as little surprise. X had shown his face all over these videos and was clearly not shy
Cooked.
about exposing this lab.
Cooked.
And with so many people now blaming the government,
Yeah, they got
it was
that
only
guy.
a matter of time before
R.I.P.
he was silenced.
R.I.P.
In
my
fact, X himself even foresaw this happening all the way back in that first clip.
视频的限制啊，大家心里也懂啊。
Unsurprisingly, when X's account went dark, many immediately began to fear the worst, believing that he was not only silenced on social media,
IRL
but
too.
silenced altogether,
Yeah,
likely
took him
being
off the
thrown into
server.
prison somewhere or just killed outright. Because of this, X was hailed as a hero for risking his life to show the world what was truly happening there, and most believed that this would be the last time we would ever hear from X again.
For real, he's
But
one of
as
the
it turns
body.
out, something much stranger would happen from here.
Stranger
Just a
how?
few days after its
Getting killed?
removal, the Beanbag Adventure account would re-emerge, this time with all 4 of these videos missing. And even more bizarrely, he just continued uploading videos from there, going to different locations
What?
and making that same content he once did before stumbling across that lab.
Like it didn't
Despite
happen?
the massive virality of the story, not once has he ever acknowledged any of his previous findings. And if you look at his page today, you would never
They
know
cloned this nigga.
that just a few months before, he had the entire nation in an uproar.
Right?
The whole situation is incredibly off-putting, and who knows what happened to X during that time his account went down. But whatever it was, it clearly frightened him enough to never speak of this abandoned building again.
They cloned Tyrone.
For many,
Yeah.
this behavior confirmed their suspicion that the government
I don't think I finished the movie, but I did see they cloned Tyrone. That's a pretty good film. I think it also has that has a bunch of really good black actors. I've forgotten most of their names, but I have seen it. It's pretty cool.
was somehow
It's the one where
involved in
they were using fried chicken to it's so fucked up, but they're using fried chicken to control people, right?
whatever the activity was happening within this structure. While for others, this confirmed that this was all somehow staged. As if it were real, the chances of X being alive right now would seem to
Jamie
be
Foxx,
rather
yeah.
unlikely. Plus, within all his exposés of this lab, he never actually revealed where it was, causing doubt in the minds of a select few. But if I'm being honest, I just don't believe that those bodies could have
That's my
possibly
only-
been faked.
Nah,
Though
they
due
got
to the
you,
nature
bro.
of cases like this in China, a true answer has never and likely will never be fully revealed, leaving us with nothing more than speculation and a mystery far darker than any we've ever delved into. I'll be monitoring this case for the next few months to see if anything
Bombo Clot, bro. Nah. That's insane.